We've been looking forward to this day for a really long time. We launched the Graph Network last December, and since then, indexers and delegators have been working together to bootstrap the network and get it ready for today. The Graph is without a doubt one of the most complex protocols on Ethereum. There's staking by indexers, delegation to help secure and allocate resources on the network, and curation to help organize all of the data on the Graph in a decentralized way, and query fees for consumers using state channels, which is a technology we've been working on over the last several years in partnership with Connext. All of these components, roles, and incentives are tightly interconnected and form the basis for the economy in the Graph network. We needed to build a set of products that could help hide the complexity of all of these different components and make it really easy for participants to contribute and use the Graph network. Today, we're launching two new products. Graph Explorer, which is a whole new way to participate in and interact with the Graph network, and Subgraph Studio, a new way for developers to build, test, and publish their subgraphs on the decentralized network. Together, these create the full self-service experience so that everybody can participate in and contribute to the Graph. We've been building the Graph as a decentralized network from the very beginning because we really believe that every layer of the stack has to be decentralized in order to enable the kind of transformation that we want to see. Long term, our vision for Web3 is that end users are going to pay for the metered usage of the services that they consume. That's the only way to make sure that users have power and control in their own hands. In the meantime, we're launching a set of gateways that make interacting with the network seamless for users. dApp developers can pay the query fees using these gateways that are geographically distributed all across the globe. When an end user makes a query on an application using the Graph, that query gets routed to the nearest gateway, and from there to a nearby indexer using an indexer selection algorithm that takes factors into account such as performance, cost, and security. So now developers can easily publish their subgraphs on the decentralized network, set up API keys where they can pay query fees, and curators can come signal on those subgraphs so that all of the data can be well organized and easily accessible to developers and end users. On the network, you have indexers competing to provide the best service at the lowest price, and so you never have to worry about uptime for your applications. Indexers can granularly set their prices per query using a cost model language we've developed called Agora. This lets them granularly specify prices for different types of queries so that there's always an incentive to go in and hyper-optimize any slow parts of your application. This way, you just don't have to think about the back end. And of course, the Graph is known for its world-class design. We think it's really important that Web3 is easy for people to use. These releases are the culmination of almost 4 years of work by our design, product, and engineering teams. We started the initial designs for these products over 18 months ago, and it's just taken an incredible amount of refinement to get the entire product experience to be something that exposes all of the power of the network, but in a way that anybody can easily interact with. And to give you a first look, I'm going to pass it over to Nena Jaja.
Hi, I'm Nena, Product Engineering Lead at Node. I'm going to demo the brand new products we're launching today, Graph Explorer and Subgraph Studio. When you land here, you can view the list of all the published subgraphs on the network. You can see what their signal is, sort by the highest signal, and decide which ones are the ones you're most interested in. You can view the details of a subgraph by going here. For example, you can see the creator of it, their website, who are the indexers and curators, and might be especially interesting query fees and curation over time. If you decide you want to signal on the subgraph, you go here. You can select the specific version you want to signal on, decide on the amount of GRT, and with a few very simple clicks, you can provide your signal to the subgraph. Here you can view all the participants in the network. Let's check out the indexers table. You can preview a couple of parameters that might help you decide in case you want to delegate some of your GRT to them. And if you select one of them, you can see the detailed information, stake and income over time, delegation that's available for this indexer, and other parameters that can help you take a decision. If you decide you want to delegate to this indexer, you go here, input the amount of GRT you'd like to delegate, and with a few simple clicks, you can complete your delegation. You can view the network activity and epochs here. For example, you can view information such as total stake in the protocol, total token supply, indexing rewards, query fees per epoch, and different protocol parameters. We built Subgraph Studio for subgraph developers because we love you and we want you to build more subgraphs. When you go here, you land on a subgraphs page if you have any. If not, it's very easy to create one. You click here, you create a subgraph, and then what you need to do is develop it on your local machine. When you're ready to publish your subgraph to the decentralized network, you go back to the UI, click on Publish, select testnet or mainnet, and simply publish your subgraph. Then you can go back into the Explorer and see your subgraph live on the decentralized network. In order to query subgraphs for your DApp, you need to create an API key. You do that in Studio. It's very simple. You go here, follow the steps, and there you have your API key. After you create an API key, you can restrict it by certain subgraphs or certain domains. Then you will go to billing and deposit some GRT. We use Polygon Bridge to make depositing GRT faster and cheaper. After you're done with that, you'll have your balance and you can now use your API key. It's just that easy to publish subgraphs to the network and participate no matter what your role is. We hope you love using these products and we can't wait to see what you build.
Blockchains are the future of the internet, and the graph is the decentralized indexing and query layer for this future. Subgraphs are open APIs that developers build. Examples of this are like Uniswap.info. So Uniswap.info is a subgraph, and that's how Uniswap pulls trade data from the Ethereum blockchain to serve that data to users of Uniswap.info. And then you see CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, which are some of the most used websites across the crypto space. They actually pull that data from Uniswap. And so these subgraphs are kind of like Lego building blocks on top of one another. And we've seen so much transparency and so much innovation across so many segments within the blockchain space, including DeFi, which is decentralized finance, as well as NFTs, which is digital art. And now we're seeing an emergence in DAOs, which is kind of creating a new work culture or a new governance structure, which is really exciting. The graph has taken this progressive decentralization path, and in December of last year, the decentralized network launched. And so the graph is making open data a public good, and so anyone across the globe can interact with this graph's decentralized network. And we've been really bootstrapping the supply side of that network, so there are over 150 different indexers on the graph network, which each are their own business, their own organization. Some are just one person running a node, but others have teams wide, and they're spending a lot of time doing DevOps. Also delegators, so there's over 7,000 different delegators, which delegators, it's almost like a passive income role. Anyone across the world can be a delegator on the graph network. You choose an indexer, the indexer does the heavy lifting, and then the indexer splits the amount that they earn, the amount of GRT they earn with you as the delegator. GRT is a work utility token. So this means that GRT is used, the creation of GRT was so that it could be used in the graph network and earned in the graph network. Right now, dApp developers have actually taken the cost on for their users to reduce friction to pay for queries on those dApps. And so who earns that GRT that's being spent on these dApps? It's the indexers, delegators, and the curators within the graph ecosystem. The indexers, that's the most technical role. So indexers stake GRT on subgraphs, and they serve queries in a quick and efficient way. And then the delegators, this is the least technical role. So the delegators are just delegating stake to the indexers, and the indexers are doing that heavy lift and then splitting that stake with the delegators. And then the curators are minting signal on these subgraphs, and then the indexers look at that signal to then stake on those different subgraphs. So this upcoming product launch is really bringing the graph into the graph's full form. As I mentioned, we've taken the progressive decentralization approach, and this upcoming launch is really helping to reinvent the internet as we know it. Now there's the Explorer, and with the Explorer, anyone across the graph ecosystem, there's so many different roles, can all interact and see everything that's happening within the graph ecosystem transparently. There's the Subgraph Studio, and then Curation is going live. And we interact with Curation from centralized companies all the time when it comes to like Apple Music. But the difference is that there's Apple and Google deciding who's the curator. Is it algorithms? Is it different people? They're hiring those people. And with the graph ecosystem, curation is decided by the free market as opposed to a centralized company at the middle. And I think that's really powerful, and we're going to see how that plays out. So these curators are, I call them open data alpha finders. So anyone who's like an investor in crypto or anyone who's a trader in crypto will make a great curator, because what the curators are doing is they're looking for the up and coming subgraphs, and they're trying to be the earliest to those subgraphs to mint signal on a bonding curve so that they can earn if they're correct about those subgraphs. So it's kind of the same approach as you take to investing in different projects. Do you believe in this subgraph? Do you think that this is going to be a used subgraph, or is this subgraph going to have a lot of queries? And then the indexers see that signal that the curators mint, and then they know to index that subgraph and serve queries quickly and efficiently. So we've seen this impact already. The DeFi boom, I look back, I'm from the traditional finance space. I look back to the financial crisis, and that crisis might not have happened if we had transparency, if that was built on blockchains. A lot of those bonds were there, they were owned. The banks just couldn't identify where those bonds were. Within the decentralized finance space, the DeFi space, we have transparency. And so there was so much innovation that happened with like flash loans. That's something that has never before happened. It's never been possible in any other industry. And because of these open APIs, because of these subgraphs, we saw this big movement occur within DeFi. And then a lot of capital flowed in, this kind of DeFi bubble popped a little bit, and then we saw a massive emergence again of DeFi afterwards. And so I think that it's just so powerful to have open APIs as opposed to closed APIs. An example of a closed API is like Facebook or LinkedIn. Even though that's our data, we don't own that data. Facebook owns that data. So I can't port the Facebook data to my own application, nor can I port it to like a Crunchbase, because LinkedIn and Facebook own that data. With subgraphs, the data is open. So anyone can use that data, anyone can port that data to their own application, like Lego building blocks for innovation. Decentralization is really important for protocols. It's important for developers to know that what they're building on will always be there. Also, decentralization within the graph network means that there's redundancy. So not only is there one indexer that's helping to index these different subgraphs, there are now multiple different indexers. So if one goes down, there are many others that can pick up that slack to index those subgraphs, which is really great for developers who had previously maybe been running a secondary indexer in-house or a secondary node in-house in case there was ever downtime. The idea is that we're reducing the barrier to entry for these developers to be able to build applications on blockchains. So any dApp developer can be a curator within the graph ecosystem, and they can actually earn GRT for being curators and providing that service to the ecosystem by saying, this is a subgraph that I believe in, I built this subgraph, and now I'm going to stake my GRT because I believe in this subgraph so much. And then many other curators can see that signal, and they can actually follow suit and join in on signaling on that subgraph because they trust that dApp developer's signal. And then they can also earn within the graph ecosystem if they're correct on that bet. As a curator, because curation happens on a bonding curve, you can make money, but you can also lose money. So make sure that you are carefully choosing which subgraph you are curating on. The applications you know and use on your iPhone, that's what people are building in a decentralized way. We call them dApps. And those dApps are the future of the internet. So a lot of people across the world use smartphones, so they're very familiar with applications. So that's what this decentralized world will look like as well. So you don't need to be technical to understand which application you enjoy using. So I would say, there's not a huge technical barrier to entry. You can come in and you can be a curator. Anyone across the world can come in and be a curator. Curators can have an expertise in any different area. For example, if you're an artist or a creator, you can specialize in applications that are within the NFT space, and you can curate on those applications. And so I envision that we'll actually have curators that are subject matter expertise, some in DeFi, some in NFTs, some in DAOs, and I'm sure many of you listening are in Web2 jobs or in the traditional finance space. And I would say I welcome you to join this movement and join this ecosystem, because the graph is fundamentally changing the way we think about work. And not just the graph, many different protocols within the blockchain ecosystem are fundamentally shifting how we think about work. And you can be, a delegator on the graph ecosystem, earning passive income while also providing Uniswap liquidity and earning passively for doing that. And so I think we're no longer going to need to only work for centralized companies or banks or Web2 companies, and instead we can work for ideas and work for protocols. If you are a subgraph developer that has interest in migrating from the graph's hosted service to the decentralized network, feel free to get in touch with anyone at Edge and Node, the Graph Foundation, StreamingFast, or anyone within the graph ecosystem. There's a Discord, there's a Telegram channel, so please reach out. We're here to help. And now I'll hand it over to Eva Balin to share everything that's happening within the graph ecosystem.
The graph is the first decentralized data market in the world. This means that data like your wallet balances or maybe looking at your smartphone, all of that can be indexed on the graph once that data is on a blockchain. And the best part is that people can contribute to that data economy. Whereas in Web 2, it's centralized companies or administrators that earn the revenue from that data service. Anyone can participate as an indexer, curator, or delegator and contribute to the global graph of data. In Web 2, APIs are centralized and closed. For the average user, this means it's very hard to access data like your bank records or your medical records. For an analyst or a trader, it means it's very difficult to find any industry data. And for a developer, that means it's difficult to create any kind of front-end application and query data, whether that's on the Web 2 internet or on a blockchain. With the graph, we actually incentivize open source APIs called subgraphs. And we incentivize people to build them because by deploying these open source subgraphs, anyone can then also earn fees for their contributions. So if you're a subgraph developer, you can deploy on the mainnet and also curate on that subgraph to earn a portion of your query fees. What's most exciting for end users is that you can use an app and then also earn for the usage of your favorite app. So any query or opening of an application that your friend makes, maybe you can earn a portion of that fee. Retrieving blockchain data is hard, and the graph solves this problem in a decentralized way. Instead of applications needing to rely on one server or one indexer, they rely on a network of indexers, which are essentially servers that are willing to provide querying and indexing services to them at any point in time, anywhere in the world. This means that end users can rely on their applications to never be taken down, and they can always access their information on-chain. Tim Berners-Lee had a vision for the semantic web, a way of organizing and structuring the data that's on the internet to make it much more easily accessible for developers or end users. And the graph is bringing that vision to life. The graph is essentially the semantic web for all blockchain data, and the way you access that data is by querying a subgraph. So now applications and developers don't need to build their own proprietary databases or indexers. They can rely on the open source code of their peers. This makes innovation much more efficient, allows us to collaborate a lot more, and enables an open data economy. This launch of the Graph Explorer and the Subgraph Studio are monumental for developers. This means that now they can collaborate a lot more easily and don't need to build redundant APIs. They can also contribute to each other's work and be a lot more collaborative than they are today. This also increases the pace of innovation. Instead of requiring people to work in silos or in independent teams, people are incentivized now to work together and even stake and curate on each other's work. dApp developers are also incentivized to use open APIs to ensure that they are no longer a central point of failure. No dApp wants to hear from an end user that they weren't able to access the app because of downtime or because another service provider took them down. And now end users can be sure that their apps and their data are accessible globally. This is the first time in history that end users can participate in a protocol that they actually use and also earn rewards for it. So you can earn rewards from curating on your favorite subgraph for your favorite DApp, and earn rewards that you can then restake on another subgraph or even become an indexer or delegator. This is revolutionary. You can either earn passive income on the graph, or you can become a full-time contributor as a delegator, indexer, or curator. You should add that to your LinkedIn, your Twitter, your resume, because all of us are contributing to the global graph of data. In Web 2, what we currently know as the internet, there are a lot of negative-sum and zero-sum games, where companies exploit their users or other companies and develop monopolies and oligopolies to continue optimizing for their bottom line. In Web 3 with the graph, we're incentivizing collaboration and positive-sum games. So you can be an indexer, curator, delegator, or subgraph developer. You can even be multiple roles at the same time, but you don't need to extract or exploit from your peers to create value. Web 3 is a revolution in ownership. People can now own their data, they can own their assets, and they can even own their contributions. Anyone can contribute to the graph, whether it's a few hours a week or in a full-time capacity. There's a role for everyone. You can be non-technical and a curator, and all you really need to know is which applications are providing you as a user the most value. As a non-technical user, you can also be a delegator and delegate the responsibility of indexing to another indexer. You're also contributing to the security of the network. Other ways you can contribute to the ecosystem is by applying for grants. Whether you have an idea for a protocol upgrade, new tooling, new subgraphs to deploy, or dApps you'd like to see built on Web 3, we're here to help. Even community initiatives such as translating content, guides for bringing new developers into crypto, or learning more about the open data economy, we're willing to fund whatever it is that brings the graph ecosystem to the mainstream. If you're a developer that knows TypeScript, JavaScript, or GraphQL, get involved with subgraph development. It can take anywhere from 1 week to a few weeks to build, but with a lifetime of opportunity, a subgraph can make a huge difference in bringing richer data to applications. If you're interested in getting involved in governance of the graph, such as upgrading the protocol or setting subgraph standards, contribute to the graph improvement proposal process. The GIP process is hosted on Radical, and we go through a community snapshot vote to gather community sentiment. Then the proposal is summarized and the Graph Council votes. Head to the forum to share any ideas you have, formulate that into a proposal, gain buy-in from the community, and you can have an impact on the evolution of the protocol.
We're at the beginning of a journey to change how humans cooperate and organize on the internet. Today's launches is a giant step forward in that direction. On the web of today, the software and information is controlled by whoever runs the server, and that means that corporations and even governments end up making decisions around what information is considered to be true. But there's just no way for a small group of people to have all the answers. And so it's really important that we open up the systems that we use to coordinate and make decisions to make sure that we're able to leverage the sum total of all of the knowledge, hard expertise that people have to offer. With the graph, we have the foundation to help organize and serve all of the world's public information in a decentralized way. It starts with a set of protocols that define different roles and ways that people can interact, but in a verifiable way. Once that data exists on a blockchain, a storage network, or any crypto network, it can be indexed on the graph and surfaced to end users in a way that they can trust. Decentralized protocols create the right kind of incentives and structure so that people can work towards a common goal in a way that was never before possible. We believe that protocols are the successor to the corporation as being the primary means of scaling human coordination. There are people in all areas of the economy that have deep insight on some area of specialization or knowledge. And today, the main way that they're able to monetize and contribute their knowledge is through proprietary contributions to corporations. But we believe that most of this knowledge and information should actually be public goods, that information wants to be free, and that people want to contribute their skills and their knowledge to humanity as a whole. Everybody's got something to contribute. And the way we've structured society today is very limiting in giving people opportunity. But on top of these decentralized networks and protocols, we're opening the space back up so that everyone can find their passion, what they want to do for work, and contribute their best selves to this global infrastructure that we can all use together. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us. It's been truly remarkable to see this whole community come together. From subgraph developers, building incredible subgraphs in every area of the crypto economy, people starting podcasts, really sharing interesting stats and helping to onboard the next generation of delegators and curators. People have really made this their own, and now there's a whole new set of tools that we can use to take this community to the next level. With the products launched today, we now have everything we need to really bring the graph to life. So let's do it. Let's build that decentralized future.
Hi, I'm Rodrigo with Edge and Node, and I know a lot of you have questions you've been meaning to ask, and we're here to answer them for you. So let's just get right into it. So this launch is a huge event in the history of the graph, and what does this mean to you personally and to the future of decentralization?
To me personally, it means we've built one of the most complex dApps that exists in Web3 that allows many different kinds of participants to interact. So whether you're an indexer, delegator, or curator, you can all use the Graph Explorer dApp to do whatever it needs to be done for the network.
Yeah, I think we've had the vision for a lot of this stuff really just for years, and so actually seeing it live is just incredible. And for me, it's really about empowering people to contribute to this thing that is, a larger whole, right? These public goods that are part of this global public infrastructure. And I think the products themselves, took a lot of time to kind of get to where they are today. But finally, we feel that it's really ready. And I think it's just a giant step forward for the entire Ethereum ecosystem.
Absolutely. It's been 4 years in the making, and it's so amazing just to see the products go live today. And I know there's so much more that's coming up, but I just feel like this is such a tremendous milestone for not just people within the graph ecosystem, but really for the future of the internet.
So what is it that people can do today that they couldn't do before?
The first thing that they can do with this new launch is curation. So curating data is a critical part of Web 2 as well as Web 3 because it allows people to know the quality and accuracy of whatever they're curating. So our curators have been with us for several months since the curator program in 2020, and we're excited for them to be able to now participate in the network.
Yeah, we're really pioneering like a brand new way of delivering a service. People are used to SaaS products which have very standard ways of operating. You add a credit card, you maybe get charged a monthly recurring fee, and the graph is a decentralized network, and so it just works differently. Being able to deposit funds on Ethereum to pay for query fees, for example, is really a new thing. But I think we've made that a really smooth experience, and so it's just as easy for developers to get started and to pay for this service where you're just getting paid for the metered usage of the services that you're consuming, but it's running on global, open, public infrastructure.
Yeah, and starting today, developers of subgraphs can actually migrate those subgraphs over to the decentralized network permissionlessly. So they don't need to interact with anyone from the team to ask permission for them to be able to do that. And I think that's such a powerful thing, and I think it's going to lead to this explosive innovation on the graph network beyond just the hosted service.
Yeah, and on a personal level, I'm sure the team is really excited to no longer have to be responsible for operating all of this, giant infrastructure. I think it's a lot of stress for any team to have to try to maintain 100% uptime. And with decentralized networks, you just don't have to do that. It's not any one team's burden to carry the infrastructure for the entire space.
That was something that really stuck with me when I first met you and joined the graph. Was the vision has always been to decentralize, and so we recognized that the hosted service was never the long-term solution, and we were part of that problem until we actually launched the network itself.
Yeah, that's right. The hosted service was always just a stepping stone to allow us to really prove out the developer tools, the subgraphs themselves, make sure the developers could start building. But we've been working towards the decentralized network and now towards this fuller kind of vision from the very beginning.
Can you talk about some of the unique challenges it is to build something in a decentralized way as like a protocol versus building it in a centralized way as like a firm or a company would?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with like the economic design, coming up with the incentive structures for all of the different roles and doing that in a way that's robust to, erratic behavior, because you really can't predict what people are going to do. And these systems, they tend to become really complex, when they're kind of out of your control that way. And so that's kind of the first step. Another thing in this network, for example, is security, right? So making sure that you can verify that either the indexing work was done correctly or that a query response is done correctly, and be able to launch a dispute and have that dispute be resolved if an indexer, for example, is acting maliciously. So there are all of these types of things that you have to do to create a network that's secure, that's fast and performant. Right, that's another thing. When you have all of the servers just run and controlled by a single company, it's easy to build something that is fast to start. But actually, decentralized networks can build something that's a lot more performant at scale because you have so many different entities that can independently add servers, optimize things in a way that like central top-down coordination can't really do. And so it's that social scalability of decentralized networks that actually can allow them to be even faster and more reliable than a centralized service.
Yeah, I would add that a company is very limited in what it allows people to do and the ownership that they can have in their impact, whereas a protocol allows a number of companies to come together around a shared mission and have their own hero's journey in that ecosystem. And we're really trying to drive towards that goal where we have Edge and Node, as well as StreamingFast, the Graph Foundation, Protofire, other organizations that are all contributing what they can to this mission. And that makes a much larger positive sum game than we've had in Web 2.
Yeah, that's so right. There's the technological decentralization, making sure that the servers can be run by anybody that is permissionless, and then there's the organizational decentralization and all of the time investments that it takes to actually scale an ecosystem of independent companies and teams and participants that can all contribute while still working towards a shared mission.
I would say instead of all of it funneling up to one centralized company, now people are able to be compensated in protocols commensurate to the value that they're bringing, because there's no intermediary that's intercepting those funds. And I think in protocols, I believe that tokens are the next evolution of the business model away from SaaS. But within protocols, what you need to ensure that you do is you have revenue that instead of flowing to the top to a centralized company, it instead flows peer-to-peer to the participants in that ecosystem, and that is just so powerful.
Where do you think we are in terms of this progressive decentralization of, moving from Web 2 to Web 3?
So the infrastructure is still being built out right now. We are seeing applications already getting built on top that are pretty great. Right, so in DeFi and NFTs and governance, I think we're seeing applications that already work and are better than what you could do before crypto and Web3. But we're still building out this Web3 platform. And so I think that the real kind of societal transformation hasn't even started yet. This year, with the Graph network and other crypto protocols really maturing, we're starting to really get to a more mature place with this foundation. But I think we've got a really long way to go. First, to even really define how to build a dApp in a way that is really easy for developers to do, and kind of defining that full protocol stack. And also coming up with the new types of interactions that users are going to have to learn, what it means to have your self-sovereign identity and reputation, to be able to take your data with you between different applications, and to kind of build out this full, Web3 vision.
And I think that we are seeing a mass exodus of talent from Web 2 into Web 3. So many people have already left, and more are looking at how they can get involved in the blockchain space. And I think that's going to lead to a lot more innovation a lot more quickly.
There's that old saying is follow where the developers go, right? So they kind of are ahead of the curve of what's coming.
Totally, yeah, and like what they're doing on nights and weekends,
yeah.
right? There's so many devs that are still maybe clocking in the day jobs, but they're not thinking about how to scale these web companies on the weekends anymore. That stuff is played out. They've seen where it leads. And really the excitement, the stuff that they're doing in their spare time is building on Ethereum, building in crypto. And we're already, like Tegan was saying, seeing just a tremendous wave of devs actually quitting their jobs and jumping in full time.
Mm-hmm. There was some recent news about an expansion of the core dev team. Is there anything you guys wanted to mention about that?
Yeah, so we're really excited to share that the core dev team that works on the Graph protocol has been decentralized. Now we have Edge and Node as well as StreamingFast and are looking for more contributors to help upgrade the protocol and continue maintaining it in perpetuity. Our current governance is a 6 of 10 multi-sig where we have 5 different stakeholder groups represented. And so part of our decentralized governance journey is to progressively decentralize those decision makers, which we look to do with more core devs and contributors entering the space.
That's right. It makes a huge difference to have multiple teams actually building the core software. It really allows different voices to be considered and it helps with that true kind of decentralization. There's also a tremendous amount of work ahead of us. For example, with our multi-blockchain expansion, where there are all of these different networks that we want to support on the graph. And so having additional engineers that have great expertise on those different chains is just going to allow us as a community to get there a lot faster.
The most shocking thing to me about working for a protocol is just how much there is to do. And it's really not possible for it to be done with one team, with one subject matter expertise. And so it really is a journey for the masses to come on board and for us to build this graph of data that can actually be scalable for the world.
Yeah, and for those that are listening that don't know, so StreamingFast recently joined the Graph ecosystem as a core developer team. And they were previously building in a centralized way and joined the Graph ecosystem focusing on the Graph mission, which I think just speaks to the power of protocols and us all aligning together. We were on similar paths before, and now we all have the same path in front of us. And I think that's really exciting and powerful.
Maybe for the less familiar out there, what is a protocol versus a traditional company?
So a protocol is an internet native way of coordinating participants in an open system. And so the key differences between, say, a protocol and a company is a company has a specific set of owners. They're typically hierarchical in their organizational structure. In order to contribute to a company, you typically have to get a job as an employee, and all of these types of things add a lot of friction. Whereas with protocols, you define a set of rules that govern some kind of ecosystem, and there are different roles that people can play to achieve some kind of common goal. And those rules are open and transparent, and so anybody can participate, and there's a native way of then transferring value and making decisions and evolving these systems over time. But because they're open, transparent, and have these types of properties, they can scale to be way bigger than what a single company is able to do. And so in the future, we think that there's going to be a protocol for every mission, right? Any kind of goal that you can have, a protocol is going to be the best way to align people to achieve that goal.
Yeah, and what's really powerful is now with the advent of the internet, you no longer need companies that are thousands of people wide, and instead you can have small teams that have communities that are millions, if not billions of people wide, and I think that's what these protocols will grow into.
Companies also incentivize their contributors very differently than protocols, whereas they're maximizing for their bottom line growth and maybe a specific revenue target. With protocols, it's contributors that are putting in work and then receiving a reward commensurate to the effort that they're putting in. And that could include putting their capital to work, it could be running a machine, but it doesn't need to be driven by some shareholder objective from a centralized company.
Yeah, and I think that shift from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism is a really big shift, because the interests of the shareholders are sometimes, but not always, aligned with the interests of the different participants in an ecosystem. And so it's actually better if you can have a governance process that is for the entire ecosystem with equal representation between the different stakeholder groups to make sure that the system is continuing to serve all of the participants.
I think all of us have worked at one time or another in our careers at companies. So could you maybe speak personally about your experience of the difference of what it was like working at a traditional company versus working in the environment that we work in? It's remote, it's coordinating lots of different people, the unique challenges there.
Yeah, well, we still work at a company at Edge and Node, which is like a very kind of high trust kind of environment. We complement each other really well, and that I think works great at a small scale. But Eva can speak a lot to what it's like, as a director of the Graph Foundation, overseeing like a much larger ecosystem.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest differences for me is in a company you're coordinating intra-company, so between teams, maybe trusted colleagues. With a protocol, your job is to facilitate as much efficiency and innovation between teams that technically are aligned in the same mission but have different interests and also different expertise. And so there's a bit of a larger coordination overhead, but that's exactly why we're building on decentralized infrastructure, because things like DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, or multi-sigs allow for that to be much easier for us to execute.
How do people come to consensus? How are like disagreements handled when you're dealing with like disparate opinions and different groups of people that aren't necessarily in the same company?
Yeah, so at the Graph Foundation, we have two sets of governance. One is around grants and funding ecosystem projects. So we go to the Graph Council and make proposals about what are the most interesting projects that we should be working on and which grants we should be funding. Separately, the Graph Council oversees Graph protocol decisions. So anything related to a Graph improvement proposal or an upgrade would then be passed by the Graph Council after receiving sentiment from our trusted community of delegators and indexers.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes down to enfranchising people in a process. When they know that their voice, can be heard, then they participate, and the best ideas can kind of rise to the top. So, for example, in the Graph, a lot of the early discussions might happen in like a Discord, which is a public, chat. Ideas that people want to move forward with often then move into a forum where, again, you can have very substantive discussions. And I think it's very easy for, people that are engaging in good faith to really be able to kind of evaluate what are the higher quality arguments versus others when this stuff is kind of done in public. So it's that ability for these people to participate that allows the best ideas to kind of rise to the top. And then ultimately, just because you have protocols, it doesn't mean you have leaders. Now, the nice thing is, like within the Graph ecosystem, there are leaders all over the world that work for like different companies, but that have kind of like risen in stature in the community because they're engaged, they're thoughtful, they're helping others. And so that also kind of allows the community to more quickly get to consensus.
So there may be some people that aren't familiar with Web3 and the terminology that we throw around a bit. So could you explain to us what is Web3 and why is it so important?
Yeah, so Web3 for me is the decentralized web. It's everything that exists within this decentralized space. So you hear of NFTs, you hear of DAOs, you hear of DeFi. All of that is underneath this big Web3 umbrella.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so why are NFTs important?
So I'm really excited about NFTs because it's kind of brought this funding into a new community that maybe has been previously left out. So for those listening that don't know, NFTs, it's digital art. And so many artists and creators were actually compensated a lot for the work that they've been building. And I think that's really powerful because creators and artists have previously maybe been left out of the financial system and inclusion. And so that to me was just really exciting to see a lot of the funding flow from DeFi to NFTs. And I think also within NFTs, what's exciting is that you can own this version of your art and it's yours. Also, that artists can receive a piece of the sale, the secondary market sale. So for example, what happens in traditional art markets is that you'll, as an artist, sell a painting for maybe $10,000, and then the art collector sells that for $10 million, and you don't get any of that money. And within the NFT space, you actually can collect a portion of that because it's within that code.
You spoke about DAOs. Why are DAOs important?
DAOs are a revolutionary tool set and framework for how humans can coordinate. Now, collaborative coordination mechanisms like co-ops have existed for a while, or credit unions. But what DAOs allow us to do is automate most of that and enable much more anonymous or independent contributions than we've been able to do in the past. So some of the top DAOs in the Web3 space either have fully anonymous members or are able to maintain privacy while also contributing very highly to their space.
Yaniv, Pagan, can you tell us about why DeFi is important?
So DeFi was really exciting for me because we are able to see things that can't happen in the traditional finance space happen within DeFi. And the moment that really lit that up for me was when the flash loans happened. That is not something that can happen in the traditional space. And so you see all this innovation, and the moment you see that one light of innovation, you're likely going to see a waterfall effect of innovation afterwards. And that's really what we saw within the DeFi space. Decentralized finance is important because a lot of people have previously been left out of the traditional financial system with credit scores. A lot of people aren't able to access capital, and the DeFi space breaks that open for everyone to be able to access this space. And it's really exciting for me coming from traditional finance.
All right, so you told us about what's been going on, the product launch. So how about you tell us a bit about what's next?
I'm personally really excited for us to welcome this new set of stakeholders, curators, seeing the subgraphs live on the network. And that means that we can actually do a lot more interesting things with governance, with different stakeholder groups that have very different interests. So we're going to see a lot more products and exciting announcements coming out from the graph over the next several months related to that.
Yeah, so now that we have all of these tools, we just need to organize all of the data, right? It's going to start with all of the data that's already on crypto networks, every different blockchain and storage network. And then from there, just all of humanity's knowledge and information.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the subgraphs migrate over to the decentralized network, but I'm also excited to see a new segment of developers spin up their first subgraph directly on the Graph's decentralized network. And like you said, organizing all of the world's information. I believe blockchains are the future of the internet, and I think the graph is core infrastructure that's paving the way for that future.
Thanks for your time today. We really enjoyed everything you had to say, and we're really looking forward to what's coming next. And thanks to everyone who tuned in today. Come and visit us at thegraph.com, visit our Discord or Telegram, and learn about how you can become a delegator, an indexer, or a curator, and help participate in building this decentralized ecosystem.